Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and in this video what I want to do is show you the basics of making a portfolio, a developer portfolio in as many frameworks as I can. Now again, in this video I'm not going to necessarily get into styling, I'll leave that responsibility to you, but the idea is just to show you sort of like a basic path to getting the initial pieces set up in different frameworks. If you're building a developer portfolio, it could be one page. Really what matters is that one, you explain who you are, so you think about what your brand is, like, what is it that you really like doing. Like if you're a backend developer, then talk about backend developer and how you like to build REST APIs and whatnot. If you want to be a front-end developer, talk about how you really enjoy like React or Angular or Vue and things like that. And sort of the why. You basically just want to kind of in a few quick words kind of explain sort of like who you are. Like just to show you sort of like my portfolio at the moment. My portfolio isn't the nicest portfolio in the world. I generally keep things very simple. But alexmercedcoder.com. This is actually built with Astro, which allows you to mix multiple frameworks. But just a little quick animation there. But again, in big letters, you hear who I am. Okay? So I'm a developer, I'm an educator, I'm a problem solver, I'm a tech advocate. These are sort of the things that are my brand. I like technology, I tend to be a technology evangelist, I like to teach, and I like to develop things. And that's gotten across. There's not really much else you can get from that initial page. But again, even if this was a one-pager, you could just put that at the top and then they scroll down and get more information. So contact information is down there, and again, make it easy to see. There's a little bit of a hover effect. And the main things that are here are just things I want them to see. My resume, my GitHub, so they can see my work, projects that I've done, so these are actual applications, and then I separately do libraries, because I actually probably write more libraries than I do applications. And then my blog, where they can see pieces of me writing and communicating and get a flavor for how I talk about code. So, because again, there's a few things that they care about. They want, like, do you have the skills, or do you have the potential to develop the skills? And oftentimes potential is oftentimes really related, like, is this something you're interested in? So you want to convey that. What is sort of how you see yourself? Two, what examples can I see of you coding and communicating coding? Because not only do you actually have to code on the job, but you have to communicate with others about coding, whether it's writing documentation of code, talking to other people on the team and explaining them what you've done, all these things, and that's going to affect how well you work on a team. So communication is key. That's why writing blogs, at least, can be really useful. I generally really suggest making videos and doing podcasts, doing the full media court press, so that way there's just so much evidence that it's kind of hard to say no. But this is one example. And again, this is a really simple example. It's not the prettiest resume in the world, but again, I'm more of a back-end developer, more of an advocate. So this works for the kind of roles that I target. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm going to create a folder called Portfolio, because I'm going to do all of them in there, and I'm going to just reopen VS Code in that folder. And first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a JSON file that I can reuse in all three projects, because that was just an easy place to get my data for my projects. So in all the frameworks you can use JSON files. If it's Angular, Vue, React, whoever. So I'm going to create projects.json. I'm just going to create like dummy data here. But essentially what you want to do is just create an array. This is a JSON file, so you don't have to like export anything or declare any variables. You're just writing a big JSON object. So what I want to do is write, let's say, 3 projects. So first let me just write the first one. And generally you're going to want, and the thing to keep in mind with JSON is that the strings have to be, everything has to be a string. So name, we'll say project 1, and then we'll say like description is blah 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 blah. Then we'll have a description, then we'll have like the live link. That's going to be the link to the actual deployed project where they can actually see this application live online. So we'll just say http www.google.com. Again, not the point right now. you'll provide your own live links and GitHub links. A GitHub link, http://www.github.com, and then last, you want to provide image, so that way they, like a thumbnail, so that way they can get a feel, or a GIF that they can quickly kind of get a vibe for that project. Okay, so http/ this would just be the URL to the image, www.github.com/image.png or something. Well, I'm just going to do that. Okay, cool. So then I would just make, let's say, make 3 of these. All right. Cool. And the cool thing about this is that now you have this data and you can drag it from project to project. And, you know, if you have all your project, all your portfolio data in a JSON file, it's just, you know, makes it really easy to spin up a new portfolio. So that's done. So now what I'm going to do is spin up, first we'll do a React project. And so I'll just do npm init vite. The cool thing about the Vite project generator is it allows you to generate projects from all the frameworks, for the exception of Angular. So you can quickly just generate things. So npm init vite. And it's assuming you have Node installed. If you don't have Node installed, you have to install that. So I'll call this React portfolio. And again, there's all these little choices. We're going to do React and Vue, and then I'll do Angular separately. React, React. Okay, so that created the project. So I'm going to cd into that folder. And I am going to do an npm install to install everything. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this projects.json in the source folder. Again, I have one that's out here, but each project I need to copy that JSON file into the actual project, into its source code in the source folder. So I'm going to hit paste, place that into there. So that way that's accessible. And then I'm going to make some components, new folder, components. Now again, this is not create React app. This is the Vite React template. So you do need to use the JSX file extension. Okay. So let me just make some components. New file, we'll say header .js. Import React from React. And that should be JSX. Again, this has got to be JSX for this particular template because of the way their build settings are set up. And then we're going to do function, header, perhaps. Okay, and we'll return h1, or actually just a header tag that says header. We'll come back to that in a second. And then here we will export default header. Cool. And then I want to make a main component, main.jsx, and a footer component. And then I will paste that in there, change this to say footer. And then take the main component and change that to say main. Okay, so let me import these components. I'm going to delete everything inside the app component. Okay, it's in the app.jsx file. Just delete everything inside the div. And then I'm going to get rid of this line of state. And I'm going to clear out all these imports over here. There we go. So we got our sort of simplest version of everything. Just take a look at one thing real quick. Okay, good. So here, all I really want to do is import header. Oops. Header. I want to import footer. I want to import main. There we go. And essentially all this website's going to be is just the header, the main area, that's where you'll put all your portfolio stuff, and then a footer if you want to have a footer. Okay, again, we're not going to necessarily like make an overly elaborate like React or Vue or Angular project. It's just a header, main, footer component, just to kind of break up your design. And yeah, so the header is where your navigation will go. The main is where you'll kind of put all the data about yourself and elaborate on your projects and all that stuff. And then footer, again, if you want to put any kind of footer data, you can put that there. So if I do npm start, actually it wouldn't be npm start because I'm using the Vite template. It's actually going to be npm run dev. Okay, so we'll let that load up. So let me do this. Okay, and then we can kind of see that that's all there. That's fine. Okay, all good. Now the next thing to do, let's just build out the navigation real quick. Again, I'm only going to build out the navigation once, like the HTML and the basic styling will generally be the same for the other ones, but I still will walk through sort of generating the components and looping over your projects in the other frameworks, just to so you can see how you do that. Okay, and so in this case, all I really want to do here is we'll say, you know, h1 my portfolio. And then we'll do a nav component, and then we would do like a div. And each of these divs we should wrap in an a tag, a href equals okay, and then we'll just make like 3 or 4 of them. So, you know, you should generally like be linking to your GitHub. You should be linking to your LinkedIn. Probably actually your blog should go next. Then LinkedIn. And I'm trying to think if there's any other good ones. If you had your projects or whatever on a separate page, you do that, but this kind of covers it. So those are the main links you'd want to drive them to. Okay, but you see right now it just kind of lines them up that way. So let's just quickly style that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a class name of nav. Okay, so I can style that. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the CSS file, which should be index.css. I'm going to just delete all the default CSS. I'm going to say in the header, I want the h1 that's there to be centered, text align center. Okay. Oh, that's right, because this is all, let's do that. So that way this is all flush. There we go. And then for the nav.nav, I'm going to want that to be a flex. So that way that's all going to be horizontal. Good. I want to justify content space around. So that way it spaces out the links without me having to think about it. Nice. Maybe I want to give it a nice background color. Background color, say crimson. Okay, and then font color, I might want it to be white. Give it some padding. Actually, font color would be just color. I don't have to say font. Okay, padding, we'll say 10 pixels, so it's not so claustrophobic. Font size, font size, we'll say 1.5 EMs. Okay, so that's kind of looking like a menu. Now, the problem is you have this like text decoration. For that, you need to target the A tag. So I need to be like .nav a. I need to target that A tag, and then change the color to white, so that way that's white. Okay, and then I need to get rid of that line, text decoration, none. Okay, that works, but see, like it's not the best response effect for like a link. You know, usually you get some sort of effect that kind of tells you that it's that it's a link. So in that case, I want to kind of do some sort of animation on it, just something simple. So I'll just do some transition, and I'll put it like a transition of like 0.2 seconds. Okay. Usually I would specify the properties. I want to see if I don't specify the properties, if it lets me just like apply it to anything that changes. So .nav a. So I'm going to say that, hey, when you hover over the a tag, that the color becomes, we'll say, pink. Okay, let's just start with that. Oh, I have to write the actual hover pseudo class. Hover. Okay, let's see if that works. It doesn't really seem like a transition. Let's try them. Let's see if I make this 3 seconds, is it more noticeable? Okay, yeah, so it is transitioning. So let's try making it 0.5 seconds. Okay, and to make that even more noticeable, let's just make a background color of sienna. Sounds good. Okay. And you get that nice little effect. Okay, I mean, that's like some ugly color combinations, but again, I'm not going to spend too much time here on design. The point of this video is not design. I'm going to let user do design. A good way to kind of look at design is what I'll do is I'll go to behance.com and look for ideas. So I'll just type in, like, let's say, developer portfolio. Okay, and you can like look for different ideas as far as how it should visually look that you might like. And then, you know, it's a good opportunity to practice styling and trying to achieve that. Okay, because if you're gonna, especially if you're gonna be a front-end developer, you do need to develop some of those basic CSS skills, even if it's just like replicating things that you see. Because you're not the designer per se, but you still need to like be able to take a mock-up and bring it to life. So you can go here and find ideas. But again, here I just want to show you that basic setup in these different frameworks. That's the point. Okay, so that's kind of how you'd set up like the nav bar per se. And then let's go to the main. Did I put this on the wrong component? I think I did. So let me do this. Let's cut all of this out and put that in the header like it should be. There we go. Better. Okay, now back to the main component. And here, what I'd want to do is I might have a couple different sections. We'll just, right now, we'll just worry about one section called projects. So I'll give it a class name of projects so I can style it. What I'm going to be doing is looping over that JSON data. So I imported that JSON data here. So what I have to do is I have to import that in this file. So we'll say import projects from /projects.json. And now I have that array, like the data from this projects.json file is now saved in that variable. Okay, so now I can just do a map. Okay, so just normal standard, you know, React stuff. So projects.map, and I'll just say for each P, meaning each project, what I want is a, let's say a div. Okay, and I'll give each div a class name of project, singular, and I'll have to give each one a key prop, which I'll just give it the project name. So that'd be p.name. Cool. So now I can just say h1 p.name, the name of the project. Okay, so see now all three projects are showing up. Okay, then I could do sort of an image tag and do source equals p.image. But again, that's not going to work right now because I gave it bad image URLs, but you get the idea. And ideally, I'd probably also include the alt. So I'd say alt equals probably p.name works here too. And so forth. Okay, I'm not gonna bother with the links right now, but usually what I would do is I'd create two buttons, and then I would say like one button is like the GitHub link, and then you would link that to that GitHub link, and then another button would be the live link where you can see the live app, and that's where that would link to. Okay, but again, I got to style this, right? This doesn't look particularly nice. Okay, so let's go over to our CSS. So first thing what I want to do is target the div that all the projects are in. So I want to say div projects, which I want to be a flexbox. Display flex. Okay, see now they're all side by side. Okay, flex wrap though, you're going to want it to wrap, so as you add more, they don't get all bunched up on one row. So I'm going to say wrap. Okay, and then justify content. Justify content, we're going to say space around. Actually, space between would work better on this one. Okay, I just make sure that they're kind of flush with the edges. Cool. And then I want to style those individual projects. So the project class. So for an individual project. And for that, I want to give it like a fixed height. So usually what I'm going to do is I'm going to say width is going to be 30%. So a third of the page. So that way, but as the screen gets smaller, that becomes pretty small. So then what I do is like I do a min width of 300 pixels, which should work on the smallest screen size. Okay. Now, you see like that's still like flush to the right. Let's see here what happens if I go on a full screen. Like then they're all lined up. Why is this one all lined up weird? We'll figure that out in a second. Oh, CSS. Actually, let's make that full screen just because I want to see why it's doing that. Control-Shift-I, I look in the inspector. I will hover over this and see what's this space here. Okay, so it looks like there's more divs, more project divs than there should be. So it's generating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Even though when I look at it, let me see, maybe it's probably just a build error. So if I refresh, or if I refresh, it could just, you know, break. So let's go over here in the main, see what the deal is. Project, I mean, that looks all fine. Let's take a look at the 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that looks all fine. So, see a console. Ah, did I not export the header? I did though. So it's complaining that this particular file does not import what I wanted to import. I think it's confused. So what I'm going to do is oftentimes when these bundlers get confused, the best thing to do is just restart them. So npm run dev. Yep, there we go. And let's just see, does that cure this issue? Yep. All those phantom divs are gone. Sometimes you just gotta restart it. I think it happens a little bit more with Vite because it's doing it piece by piece, which allows it to be faster. But also what happens is that certain parts of your project don't get recompiled because you're only editing one file, only that file gets recompiled. That's what makes Vite faster, but again, that could lead to some unintended consequences. So always keep that in mind. If something gets really wacky, restart your server and see if that's the issue. And that goes for any framework. Okay, so you see that. Let me just check one other thing. Yeah, I'd like to center these divs. So what I am going to do is go back to my CSS. I want to give these margin auto. And there we go, those center. See, like, so now on a small screen it gets centered, but then on bigger screens they line up. And the reason why that works is because, again, I set the width to 30%, so they're always a third. When the screen gets small enough, they're going to lock into 300 pixels, which is about the width of the smallest smartphone, for the exception of like that one that folds in half, which you can't plan for everything. You can try, but sometimes you have to just let it go. 300 pixels. So that should work for most mobile phones, and it'll just, I don't have to do any media queries, just kind of nuzzles in there. Now again, I probably want to do more work, like make these buttons blocks. The reason why would I want to do that is because right now they're on the same line as the picture. Or I could just make the picture a block. I could just say like project image, and that should be dot project, and just make that like a block. So that way those buttons get pushed down, which probably would be the better way to go. And that allowed me to set like a fixed height and width of the image, so that way all the images are, you know, uniform. So I could do something like, okay, width 200 pixels, height 200 pixels, but that means the picture might not fit there perfectly depending on the size of the original picture. So that's where like object fit 200 pixel, cover would come in. And then just to kind of show all this fitting together, we're going to put a margin auto, so that way it centers itself. And then 2 would give the image a border, just because right now we don't see a picture, so we'll just say black. Fine, let's say 2 pixels black. 2 pixels solid black. There we go. Okay, and then I fix those buttons, but for that I can just actually just put text align center in this whole div, so that way it gets inherited. Okay, and then you have like some, you know, this lines up a little bit better to get these little blocks for your projects. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on styling, but you can kind of see where this is shaping up towards. And you'd probably want to, like, you know, add some text above this. So you probably want to do something like, you know, section, and then sit there and like introduce yourself, you know, introduce yourself a little bit, and then show your projects, and then have again a footer that reminds them these are the links you want to drive them to, something like that. Okay, so that's how we would do it in React. Okay, the main thing is just kind of like how do we loop over the projects. Because the HTML generally is always the same. The styling doesn't change. Just, you know, CSS is CSS and HTML is HTML. Okay, so let's try this again in Vue. Okay, so let's close that out. Okay, and I'm going to cd back up a folder, and we're going to do another npm init vitae. And I'm going to create, we'll say Vue portfolio, and then I want to say Vue. So I created that project. I'm going to just close this. We'll refresh in a second, anyways. npm. Well, first let me cd into that folder. Vue portfolio. Let's do the npm install. Okay, so that's going to install all the things. And actually, let me just copy. So now in this project, Vue, we still have a source folder. So you still just want to copy over that projects.json into that folder. Okay, I want to just kind of empty out this component. So if you're not too familiar with Vue, basically the way Vue works is you have these 3 sections. Okay. Okay, so that's a template, like what's going to show up on the page, which right now we'll just basically start off with like a div. Okay, and then here's this is the script. This particular template is a little special, so to kind of see the syntax, you're going to want to use this link here for how to use the special setup tag. So I'm going to put that there because I might need to reference it. Okay. Yep, just refreshing myself. Got it. Okay, it's coming back to me now. Okay, cool. So this is your basic setup for a component. Okay, I will delete this line, but I'll keep the comment. Okay, so essentially what I want to do is create 3 more components. So I want to kind of keep this. Okay, and then I am going to delete hello world. I don't need that. But I'm going to create a new file in the components folder, header.vue main dot view and footer dot view. And all three of these, what I'm going to do is just copy that boilerplate, except this one's going to say main inside of it. This one's going to say header inside of it. This one's going to say view inside, footer inside of it. Yeah, it's basically the same setup. We just create the three components. Then I head back to my app component. Okay, let me start the server before I even do that so you can see this happen. npm run dev. Again, this is Vite, so it's going to be this npm run dev command. Okay, so right now there's nothing, but let me import these components. So I'm going to import header from /components/header. Then I'm going to import main from /components/main. Then I'm going to import footer from /components/footer. Okay. Failed to resolve import. Two. Did I call them right? I need to write some sort of export statement. Let me just check here. No, I think it's all good. Okay, let me just take. But I think it's because there's no content here. So let me just do something like this. Header main footer. Failed to resolve. And this should, oh yeah, that's right, because I didn't write the view extension here. That's the problem. There we go. Okay. So again, for view, you have to make sure you write the view extension. Okay, so there I got my three components. Not all that different. Again, then I would go in the header. I would just write all the HTML here. So in Vue, you can just do this all in one file. So I would write the HTML for the header component and the navigation and all that stuff here. And then I would literally write all the styling here. So you do it all in one file, which is nice. All I care about right now is the main. You already saw how I set up the navigation. I just want to show you how the loop over it. And then you, again, just do the styling in the style tag. So in this case, what I would want to do is I would want to import the JSON data. So I would import projects, just like before, projects from actually it's // where did I copy the projects to? Yeah, there should be projects in there. App main projects .json. Okay. So again, theoretically, let's say this is like the div that has the class of, well, let's do this. First we had that section tag that would have like all the description data. So we'll say lorem. And then below that you have the div with the class of products from last time, projects like last time. And then again, here's where I would do the loop. But now when you loop in Vue, you don't use map like we did in React. The way you're going to do this is you just create a div. So we're going to say div, and we'll say class project. And then what we do is we do a v4 equals, and I always forget that piece. The v4, I think it's not going to necessarily be in this page. v4. Okay, there we go. Item and items. Always forget if it's like in or for. So it's for p in projects. And then we need to add a key. So we just do key, because the idea is this is how these things help make sure they're not re-rendering too many of the same items every time they update. Not that there's going to be many updates with this. Item, p dot name, we'll say. Okay, and so what's going to do is going to repeat this div once for each project. Okay, so just so we can see it in effect, let's just do an h1 with, and then we would use double curly brackets in view instead of single curly brackets in view, and I would inject p.name. Okay, and I see project 3. Where did the other two go? Let's refresh. There we go. Okay, so you see here, I don't actually have to write like this confusing like map function. I just basically put this v4 here, and that's saying, that tells Vue that this div needs to be repeated 3 times, and each time p is going to be like that item in the array. Okay, so similar idea. It's going to be the same thing kind of in Angular. So it's pretty straightforward. Okay, and then you would go back and do styling. But otherwise, you just write the HTML the same way. Okay, and again, any JavaScript you would do in the script tag, any HTML you would do here in the template tag with these, it's called a directive. So these are Vue directives. So they'll have the same terminology in Angular, and then you have the styles where you would write here. Okay, so that's how you would do that in Vue. So let's do Angular, then we'll wrap it up. And again, if you wanted to see how I did some of the styling, watch the initial sort of React build where I went over the styling of like the header and the projects. Again, the principles were the same in Vue. There's no, again, CSS is always CSS, HTML is always HTML. So now I go back over here. Now for Angular, you would have to install the Angular CLI. So you'd have to go to angular.io to kind of see the documentation, and you got to make sure you install the CLI. So let's just find that command in case you want to install that now. This would be the command to install the Angular CLI. Since it's a -g, meaning a global install, you might need to add sudo in front to give your computer authority to make that installation. Just a heads up in case it doesn't run normally like that without the sudo in front of it. That's sudo. Okay, I've already installed it, so I don't need to do that. So I can just do ng new. Ng is just Angular's abbreviation. So ng new, we'll just say Angular portfolio. Okay, and then I just wait for that thing to kind of start up. Nope, we're not going to worry about routing today. Let's just keep plain CSS. And now it generates a project. So I'm going to head open that up. And just like the other ones, it has a source folder. So I'm going to make a copy of my projects.json into that folder. I'm going to wait for it to finish. Because the cool thing about Angular is I don't have to sit there and manually make all those components. But just to give you a tour while that builds, basically what happens is all of your components are in this app folder. Okay, so this is your application. And each component is made up of 3 files. Really 4, but there's the CSS file. So this is where you would write the CSS. So this is the app component. So this is the CSS file for the app component. This is the HTML file here. So here's where you would write the HTML for the app component, which I'm going just to delete everything. Okay, so I'm just going to get rid of everything and just replace it with hello world for now. Okay, and then there's this spec.ts. That's where you would write tests. Okay, so don't worry about that. If you're just getting started with Angular, don't worry about testing until you get comfortable just doing things in Angular. Then there's this TS file. It's a TypeScript file, because again, Angular, instead of using JavaScript or pure JavaScript, it uses TypeScript. But if you don't know TypeScript, you should still be able to manage just fine, because TypeScript is just JavaScript with some additional bells and whistles. Okay, but this is basically a class. So every component is, again, the HTML file, the CSS file, and the class. So this is where you would write the JavaScript for the component. Okay, so this thing is what you call a decorator, which just gives the basic, when you create this class, this just basic designates that this class is a component, and designates, okay, this is the file with the template. So this is where you can find the HTML for this component, and this is where you can find the styles for this component. And then this is the component's name. So this would be like what the HTML tag would look like. Okay, so that's how that works. And then basically everything is controlled by this file, app.module.ts. So this is what connects all the components together. So I don't have to do as much importing between files, because every time I create a component, it's going to get registered here under declarations, And so all my components will know that each other exist because of this module file. But usually I don't have to edit it because Angular has some tools built in for you to make that happen. So I can actually go back to my terminal, cd into the folder, so cd into Angular portfolio, and I can do ng new, and I can say ng new component, and then give the component a name, so we'll give it header. Yeah, sure, why not? Okay. Oh, I wrote, what? Did I write project? No, ng. Oh, I see. It's supposed to be ng generate component header. Okay, so that generated a header component. Notice it's already been added to my declarations. And notice it already created this header file that has the component inside of it and all of its files. So that was quick. And then I can generate the next one, ng generate component main, ng generate component footer. And see, now all my components are registered, and they now have a folder for each component. Okay, easy peasy. So now I can go back to the app component, go back to its HTML, and just use those components. But I got to make sure that I use the right HTML tag. Because notice, when I go to main, see, everything gets prefixed with app, because it's all part of the app module. Okay, because again, this is the app module. So again, there's a module. You can have multiple modules. Generally in Angular, just get used to just working with the one module. Keep it simple. Okay. But yeah, now I can just start using it. So I can go to this HTML here and just do my normal setup, which was, you know, I would just do app header, then app main, then app footer. Okay, and again, basically the convention in Angular is that it's module, then the component name, because that way you can have sort of similarly named components but in different modules if your application gets pretty complex. Like Angular is really built for like large, sprawling applications, which is why it's really popular with like enterprise applications. Cool. So technically now I should be able to write ng-serve. ng-serve is the command to serve the project, to start the development server. So that is doing the thing. Shall take a second. Okay, it's done the thing. So it's running on localhost. I always forget which one it is. Localhost 4200. So let's go to localhost 4200. And again, localhost always just means your computer, so it doesn't mean it's an actual website. Localhost just means your computer. So let's see, header works, main works, footer works. Yay, it all works. And all I have to do is just write ng component name over and over again, and it just made the thing. How nice is that? Now, all we really care about is this main component. So what I would do is first I have to make the data available to the HTML. So essentially whatever data is inside this class and whatever functions are inside this class become available to that template, the HTML template. So in that case, I want to define things here. But keep in mind it's a class, so all the rules of classes and all the nuances of classes apply. Okay, but really all I want to do is just declare, I want to import projects. That's all I want to do is I want to import projects from // just make sure I'm in the right folder, main, and yeah, there should be projects.json in here. Okay, let me just see here, cannot find, did I go not far enough? It's there. I don't know why it's not seeing it. Let me go back and take a look. Import projects from cannot find module. Oh, okay, so it has to do with Angular's build process. Okay, so in that case, I could go play with my package.json so to add this like flag, But probably the easier path to go, to not have to sit there and like, instead of importing projects, what I'll do is I'll just declare an array in here. So we'll just go say, we'll just declare a property. So I'll just say, you know, projects equals, and because it's a class, you don't have to use like const or letter or var. You're just declaring a property. And just because of TypeScript, it might get bothered, might be upset that you don't put a type. So we'll just type it as any, which means it could be anything. And then I'm going to go copy that array. So I'm going to go back to my projects.json and literally just copy the array and paste it right into here. So I'm just saying projects equals this array. Okay, so now this array, projects, is now available to the main component's HTML. Okay, that's all it takes. I just say there's a variable called projects. It's of type any. That way we don't have to have the conversation about typing right now. And then I just make it equal an array. So now I should be able to head over to the main component, and I should be able to do an ng4. So let me go find that syntax again. It's just going to be like the v4. It's just a slight, it's just a little slightly more verbose. Okay. In English, documentation can sometimes be tricky to kind of find where everything is. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. So, let's see here. Ending Angular directives, that's what I care about. Built-in directives. ng class, I want to see the ng4 directive. That's what I care about right now. The 4 is going to be the looping one models for like attaching the forms, styles to sit there and say like this class applies when this is true. Here we go, ng4. ng-if is just a conditional, like show this thing if this is true. ng4. So here's how it's going to look like. So again, not too different, but just want to make sure that I have that set up right. So again, I would probably make this like a main tag. And then in this main tag, we'll do the section. And then again, we'd have like the lorem ipsum text. Or, you know, again, this would be the text that describes you. And then I would do a div that holds the projects. This would be the one that has a class of projects. And then in there, we loop. I would do the div with the class of project singular. And then this is where I would do a loop. So I would do asterisk ng4 equals let p of projects. And it knows that it's referring to the projects in the class. Like it just kind of assumes that when I refer to variables in these directives, that it's referring to the accompanying class. How does it know that? Because again, in the class, there was that decorator that said that HTML belongs to this class, and that kind of makes the connection. Okay, so projects, and now I can just, you know, do like, and again, it's double curly brackets like view, and I can do like p.name. And let's just double check how that looks. And so you can see the 3 projects all being iterated there, and I can again write any HTML I want in that div. So I could do the whole like the image tag, the buttons, and then I would just go and style it in the appropriate CSS file for that component. So that's how you would do it in Angular. Okay, so that's sort of just like the quick sort of how would you start constructing a very simple developer portfolio in React, Angular, and Vue. Again, this is not a walkthrough how to style and make it pretty. It should reflect you and your taste and sort of the message you want to proceed. But the idea of like, you know, organizing your projects into a JSON file, into an array of objects, importing in that, iterating over it, how to set up the project, all that good stuff. Also, when it comes to deploying it, I do have an article on deployment, which I will link to in the video description. So let me go find the particular article I want. Okay, nope, I want the one. I have a lot of articles. This is so basically here, how to deploy React, Angular, Svelte, and Vue to Netlify and Vercel. And again, if you want to do Svelte's going to be a lot like the Vue setup. Again, whereas with single file components, and the components inside of the components is going to be like the HTML, the JavaScript, and the styling. So it shouldn't be too hard to figure out. Yeah. And again, at the end of the day, if you want, you could just create a portfolio with just basic HTML, or bring in something like jQuery. You don't have to build it with a framework. But if you're applying for jobs, especially for specifically front-end jobs, then it's probably a good idea to look for excuses to just work with these frameworks and get used to working with them. So my name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Have a great day and enjoy. One last quick tip, that once you get comfortable with whatever framework, you're going to get even better speed and search engine optimization of your portfolio if instead of using the main framework is using a static site generator built with that framework. So if you're using React, you would use like Next.js. If you're using Vue, you would use Nux.js. If you're using Angular, you would use Scully. And what that would do is just output your site as static HTML and CSS, which will make it faster, which would be good. Okay, and also it'll be better. Just the search engines will be much more easily able to read your portfolio. So just something to think about. But first, build a portfolio, and then you can kind of think about like, okay, how can I upgrade this to a better tool or something? Have a great day and enjoy.